14, Seattle's Morning News. Tuesday mornings, we go live to the nation's capital and Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter David Fahrenthold at the Washington Post. We'll talk about the debate in a moment, David, but let's start with the president's financial records, which I know you've taken a particular interest in. First of all, do you have any idea what the source might have been?
No idea. If I did, I would be there now instead of talking to you. I really don't. The New York Times, which published these great stories about the president's tax returns, says that its sources had legal access to the documents, but they haven't said any more than that.
Okay, that sounds like accountants. I mean, there's a congressional committee that is entitled to see them, correct?
Yes, but the congressional committee, I think, only can see a certain year range, and the Times seems to have more years than the congressional committee would see. So my guess is probably an accountant or a lawyer with access to them, either on the government side or on the private side.
Okay, so as somebody who's been close to the story from the very beginning, what surprised you, if anything, in these revelations?
Two things surprised me. In general, I felt like they portrayed a picture of the president's finances that we had been sort of getting at through other means, but they certainly got a lot more detail. The thing that they reported that surprised everybody, I think, was that Trump had only paid $750 total in federal income tax in 2016, and then again in 2017, which is, a minuscule amount. The other thing was just the size of the losses at Trump's hotels and golf courses. I mean, the things that make up the bulk of his investments now seem like almost all of them were terrible investments, even before COVID, losing tens of millions of dollars a year, which adds up to sort of this pretty significant financial crunch for him in the next couple of years, as he faces loan payments coming due on properties that certainly cannot pay the loans for themselves.
Right. It almost negated. I mean, they compared his basic salary, money to him, to somebody who's making maybe $200,000 or $300,000 a year, which is a nice salary, but nothing like what he's been claiming. Did you see anything in there, though, that indicates he did anything illegal?
The questions about illegality are, they seem to mostly focus on tax laws. Did he pay the right amount of taxes? Did he evade taxes? And that's a really hard area to sort of stand back from the outside and say this is illegal, this is not. Just because, tax law is all about fighting over minutia, and until the court rules on these questions of minutia, it's hard to say whether what he did was illegal. And just as an example, they say that he apparently asked the IRS for a $73 million tax refund in 2010 and did not know this is how it happened. The IRS gave it to him and then asked questions later. And so they've been fighting for 10 years about whether the losses that he claimed that justified that return, that refund, were justified. So was that illegal? I don't know. They spent 10 years fighting over it.
And it sounds like one of the reasons he did The Apprentice was because he needed to. He needed the money.
This is something that I think we've always known about Trump, but the Times really puts numbers on it, and you see it much more clearly, which is that Donald Trump's not a great businessman. He's a great actor. He's a great person at playing a businessman, and he played it really well in The Apprentice. But then after The Apprentice, and we got a pile of money, $400 million plus for being that actor on The Apprentice, he then, in not a great move, tried to be the businessman that he'd always claimed to be. And he started spending this money from The Apprentice on golf courses, hotels, and those things have generally been terrible. The things that he did while trying to be the businessman he played on TV have turned out terribly. The thing that he was good at was pretending to be that.
Okay, so that's going to be tough, though, then, to argue that he's making money on the presidency, isn't it?
Yes, there are cases, and which we knew about, and the Times had some more, where he is getting paid money by people who want something from the presidency. But if you're saying, is he making a profit because, now that he is president, it appears no. It appears he wasn't making a profit before, and he's certainly not making a profit now. But to me, the questions about Trump's conflicts of interest and, whether he would do a favor for someone who is one of his customers, those questions are more acute now that he's in financial trouble. If he was making money hand over fist, who cares about an extra few $100,000? Now that that these properties are all in financial distress, then it seems like any new customer, any source of revenue is even more valuable to him.
But wait a second. So in other words, if he makes money and becomes financially independent, we question him for possible emolument conflicts. And if he doesn't make money and is beholden to somebody, we question him for possibly being compromised. He can't win.
Well, it's why you don't bring the presidency the business into the presidency. It's why past presidents have put their businesses in a trust, so you don't have to deal with questions like this. You're right that there's, especially if you're like Trump and you're not transparent about what your business is doing, it's hard to escape questions about whether your business is compromising your presidency.
Okay, so tonight, as you point out, Donald Trump knows how to move an audience. He is an entertainer, and Joe Biden, whatever you say about him, entertainment does not spring to mind. So how do you think this is going to play out?
Well, it's hard to know because we've seen Biden have some pretty decent debate performances, and he's gotten better over the year. But he was terrible at the beginning. If you remember the first Democratic debates, he was rusty and just seemed confused. Trump, on the other hand, was a very effective debater in 2016 in Republican debates and with Hillary Clinton, mostly because he sort of chewed the scenery and knocked things down and didn't play by the rules. But it's a different Donald Trump now, and maybe I'll be proven wrong tonight. But if you watch him lately, it's not the same guy. It's not the same sort of confident, swaggering person. He's somebody who spent the last few years having to defend a real record in the government, and also just watching Fox News and going so far down that rabbit hole that a lot of the things that Trump talks about now, you have to be really in the Fox News bubble to know what he's talking about. He uses sort of shorthand for things that if you're just a regular person, you don't know what he's talking about. If he plays that way tonight, that could make him an ineffective debater, unlike in 2016.
We were discussing earlier on the air whether this is going to change anybody's mind, because it seems that more than in most elections, people they know these guys. They've been around for a long time. So what do you think the stakes are here in this debate?
Well, I think the stakes, people say that wouldn't change their mind, but it hasn't happened yet. I think the stakes are higher probably for Trump because he's so far behind. We had a new poll today showing him down 9 in Pennsylvania, which is a state he really pretty much has to win. So he needs to sort of show himself to be a competent leader, not a troll, but somebody who's like in charge of the government. For Biden, there are some significant stakes for him too, because Trump and other people aligned with Trump have spent so much time pushing the argument that Biden is basically in mental decline, that he can't finish his sentence. He doesn't know where he is. So Biden needs to be, that's lowered the bar for Biden, but Biden needs to prove to people that he is sharp, he's a good debater, that he's able to sort of go back and forth with Trump. So, like any presidential debate, the stakes are high for both people. Probably won't change anybody's mind, but if somebody screws up on a big scale, it could be a really election-changing moment.
Yeah. What should the president say if Biden brings up the question, how do we know you're not beholden to some foreign power for that $200 million you have to pay back?
Well, that's one area where the Times story, I think, has actually bolstered Trump's argument. The Times looked into every nook and cranny of Trump's finances, and they say they haven't found any evidence of foreign influence, in terms of, Russian money backing up his loans or anything like that. So Trump can say, look, I've the Times has looked at all this stuff and showed I don't have that connection. Now, Trump could say that. What he actually is saying is the Times story is all fake and nobody, it's all made up. So he may not cite that. But that certainly could be an argument he could take if he wants to admit the Times story is right.
Yeah, because to me that's the part that seems most vulnerable. Most people understand that this is a huge amount of money and it could compromise the president. But he's already said that the whole thing is fake. That's the other problem, though. If you're telling me there's nothing in there that shows he did anything illegal, but at the same time he's arguing that's fake. So you're saying he should probably embrace the report rather than denigrate it.
Well, it's a real change from the way he was in 2016. 2016, if you remember, people said, kind of guessed at the time that he was paying very little income tax. And he was like, that makes me smart. I'm going to get in and I'm going to reform the system so that I can, help the little guy and take down the big guy, which of course he has not done. But the argument now seems not to be that anymore. Like, not that makes me smart and I'm going to fix the system, but it's all fake. Don't believe it.
Yeah. David Farenthold, live from the Washington Post. David, thank you.
Thank you.
It's 8:23, Seattle's Morning News. That's time for KIRO Radio Real-Time Traffic, brought to you by Chevrolet of Everett. And for Chris, here's Emery Martin.
Got a new problem in Bellevue this morning.